Hello and welcome everyone. Let's get this started. So welcome to our ERG Prospective Students info session. And I'm just realizing I have an echo that I need to get rid of somehow. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay. All right. But I see that more and more of you are joining. There are two of us today that will be doing this session. So that's Candace and myself. I'm David Anthoff. I'm a professor in the Energy and Resources group at UC Berkeley, and I'm the admissions chair for ERG. So I jointly run admissions with Candace. And Candace, do you want to say a sentence about yourself?
Sure. My name's Candace Groskreutz, and I am the Graduate Student Affairs Officer for ERG. So I handle all of the logistical issues for admissions.
Great. Today's session is really meant to help you with your application. And then we have planned a lot of time for any questions that you might have. And so just as a preview, you can submit questions in the chat here on YouTube throughout the whole session. We will give a short presentation at the beginning about a couple of topics that we wanted to cover, but feel free to just type in your questions while we go along. And then once we are done with the official part, we'll try to answer as many questions that we get from your end as possible. So that's sort of the format. We have a hard stop at 3 p.m. Pacific time. So we will not go longer than that. And if we run out of questions before that, then we will just end a little bit earlier than that. All right. So maybe one other thing that I wanted to say before we get started, and that is we have a fair number of other videos about our degree programs and what the topics are that we research and where all the different faculty are introduced. We had a really interesting panel discussion with current students that is up on YouTube. And this session, at least the topics that we will present, is really about the application and advice and tips for you on how you can put in a great application. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the differences between our different degree programs and what the faculty do and so on. So that's not part of the presentation that we have prepared. But I should say, we're happy to answer any and all questions in the second part of this live stream. So if you have questions about something that is not directly related to the application, feel free to ask them as well. We're just here for an hour to help you with your application to ERG. All right, I think with that, let me go to, so we have a few slides here. And I'll just go through them, and I'll try to do this as quickly as we can so that we have as much time as possible for your questions. And let me just take a quick look on the, okay, so I'm not seeing anything that we have technical problems, so I'll just assume that you can all hear us and see us and that we can go ahead. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is it's really important. We will talk about individual sort of application things that you need to submit, but I want to highlight that at the end of the day, we are committed to what's the technical lingo for that is called a holistic admission process. But what that means in practice is that there's no one individual piece of information in your application that is a yes or no criterion for us to admit you or not admit you. So we do not have a minimum GPA that you need to have. Yeah. We do not have a required amount of experiences that you have. We have not a list of undergraduate universities that you need to have gone to or anything like that. We look at each file in its entirety, and we're trying to find files that are really exciting and excellent, and that can take very, very many different forms. Okay, so I just want to stress that at the outset, that we are not looking for like one metric on which you excel, and that is sort of how we compile our class. We really are trying to look at your file in a very comprehensive way. And then just to stress this session today is really meant to help you put forward your best application. So we do not want to see an application where someone didn't understand a question and then they submitted an application that is less good than it could have been. We want to see, we want to help you put forward really your best version of yourself in this application. So that's the point of this session here. There are no silly or stupid questions today. So you can ask whatever you want, and we will try to answer them. We will also not, obviously, take the questions that you ask today into account in the admissions process. So don't be afraid that you might ask a question and then we might make a note somewhere, and that's not happening, right? Today is really just purely based. The idea is that we help you. Okay, so for your application, these are essentially the things that you need to put together for an application. The things at the end only apply to a subset of people. So there's an application form, there are statements and essays, you need to submit transcripts, you need letters of recommendations, you need to submit a CV. One thing that is new this year, we are asking for a quantitative resume, and then, as I said, some things for some subset of applicants. And what I will do now is I will just run through each of these and give you a couple of hints and tips and tricks and pointers that hopefully will help you a little bit when you put all of these things together. So let's start with the application form. So the first thing is that you need to make a choice where you apply. There are really just 3 options for you. You can apply to our PhD program, or you can apply to our master's program, or you can put in an application where you do a joint degree. Sorry, not a joint degree, a concurrent degree. Between where you get an ERG master's and at the same time you also get either a public policy degree or a law degree. Those take a little longer because you are getting 2 degrees, but that is another choice that you have. One thing that I want to highlight right away, because that comes up every year, is that people wonder, should I apply to the MA or the MS for our master's degree? And the advice on that one is, it really doesn't matter. This is not an important choice. Don't stress over that. It plays no role in the admissions process whether you picked one or the other. We just look at this as one master's degree program, and if you are admitted and you are here, you can always switch between the 2 of them. This is more of a So don't stress over that at all. Quite frankly, you could probably roll a dice between the MA or MS for the application purpose. We have 2 options that you can, it's just check boxes on the applications, and I want to explain those a little bit, that only come into play if you end up not being selected for your primary choice. So for anyone who applies to the PhD program, there's a checkbox where you can indicate that if you're not admitted into the PhD, whether you would still be interested to be enrolled in the master's program in ERG. And the reasoning for that is that our PhD students go through most of our PhD students go through the 2-year master's degree that we also offer in any case in the beginning. And so if you don't have a master's degree yet in this space, and you are looking to get a PhD at some point, you would go through this master's degree program in any case if you were admitted into the PhD at ERG. And so there's a way for you to indicate, hey, I would still be interested in the master's program even if I'm not admitted for the PhD. And there's a route, if you are admitted into the master's, to then reapply for the PhD program in your 2nd year of your master's degree program. And it's not an uncommon route. I think every year we have a couple of people that were admitted into the master's degree program and then decide, hey, I actually want to continue with the PhD, and then they have to, then they can reapply to the PhD. So that is choice number 1. And then the Energy and Resources Group, or ERG, is part of a college on campus. That's sort of the next larger unit. And our college, the Rausser College of Natural Resources, is offering a new interdisciplinary master this year. It's called the Master of Climate Solutions. It's a bit of a different degree program. It's only 1 year. So it's much shorter than the ERG master's program. And it has, so there, I'm not going to go into all the details of the differences there, but there is possibility for you to indicate that if your application to the ERG master's program is not successful, that we can take your application and forward it to the Master of Climate Solutions application process, and then they would consider your application. And the reason for that is very simple. Typically, for ERG, we select a small cohort every year, and if we look at the files of the next 15 to 20, or I don't know, probably even more students, they are of such great quality as well that we feel always bad that we cannot admit everyone. And so this is an opportunity for some of you to still have a shot at attending grad school here on campus. You need to pick a study emphasis or a research concentration. You can pick 2 of them. Just pick the thing that resonates the most of you, what you actually want to come for. I should say that is something we try to get a sense what your interests are. It does not pin you down what you actually will do once you are here. We often have students that thought they would come to ERG to study one topic, and then they arrived here, they took a class, and they pivoted to something else. So this is not something that will determine what you can then actually do once you are here. There's a short paragraph about academic interests. Think about it as a few sentences, the 1 minute sort of short summary. If someone asks you, hey, what are you interested in? That is really here. Very short. Short is the key aspect here. For PhD students, if you apply to the PhD program, you can indicate with which faculty you want to work with. I should stress that even for PhD students, you are admitted into the program and not to individual faculty. So this is more for us to get a sense of where you might want land. But once you arrive here on campus, even as a PhD student, if you realize after some while that you would like to work with someone else, then we have a lot of flexibility around those opportunities to change. And then also for PhD students in particular, we have questions about your previous training in various academic disciplines. You can write short, really short paragraphs there. You don't need to write full essays, but that helps us gauge how much training you would need to have initially at the PhD before you can start your research. Those questions will not have a big impact on the likelihood of you getting accepted or not. They're more for us to sort of get a sense of how far along you are. But we do accept people into the PhD program very regularly that have an undergraduate degree and maybe a little bit of work experience, but not extensive previous graduate training. That is perfectly fine. Okay, and I should say, Candace, if you have additional thoughts on any of these slides, please just chime in.
Yeah, I got one. Otherwise, I have something. I was going to say something about when they're selecting their emphasis or their research concentration, that sometimes if they have been in a different area and they're pivoting to a new area, that's really good to highlight too for us. So we're trying to figure out what they're really going for. Yeah. That is a really good point. Yeah, I think there are other opportunities for you to say what you did in the past, but on this form here, we really want to understand where you want to work, right? Sort of forward looking. So if you have an engineering undergraduate degree and you want to work on qualitative research in water, then the advice would be to select qualitative research here because that's what you plan to do. Okay, then you have to submit 2 statements, and they are, I really want to stress this, they are important. So in terms of how you allocate your time when you prepare your application, make sure you spend a good chunk of your time on these statements. The first one is a personal history statement, and the primary feature of the personal history statement is that it is backwards looking. Okay, so here we really want to understand what in your path in your career so far has led you to the decision to apply to our program. Why do you care about environmental and resource problems? Why do you want to go in this direction? So we want to understand your path towards your decision to apply to a degree program like ERG. There's always a risk with something like that you start to just write out your bullet point CV and you just list like, and then I did in 19, I don't know, you're probably all in 2012 I did this, in 2014 I did this. That's not what we're looking for. Okay, we are trying to see
a rationale, a storyline, an understanding of why you did the various things that are already listed on your CV. Okay, so make sure that you don't just sort of highlight stations, but actually explain to us what that meant for your desire to come to ERG. Finally, this is also a place where you can mention obstacles that you might have overcome in your past. So if, I don't know, if you had a really horrible undergraduate year where your grades were bad, but the reason was that you took care of a family member who was sick or something like that, that you could mention that in a place like that. You can mention other obstacles that you overcame that led you to the place where you are. At the same time, I do want to mention, because I think in the last couple of years, I think there has been a lot of advice out on the internet about how to write personal history statements. If you don't have a compelling, if you don't had an obstacle that you overcame, that played a big role in your decision to apply to ERG, don't try to come up with something thin. It's not, we are not sitting there with a checklist and saying, oh, this person didn't overcome an obstacle, so we will not admit them. That's not how we approach this. If it's an important thing in your personal history, then by all means mention it. But if you don't, if it's not an important thing in your path, then you can perfectly fine not mention anything, and that will not be a drawback for it when we evaluate your application. The second statement is the statement of purpose, and where the personal history statement was backwards looking, the statement of purpose is forward looking. So here we really want to understand, what are your goals? What do you want to do going forward? And how does ERG fit into that story? So this is a good place if you want to, if you're really excited about grid integration of solar power, for example, and that's why you want to come to ERG to study that topic, mention it here in your statement of purpose. So you can really, this is a good place to talk about specific research topics or areas that you're interested in. Especially if you apply to the PhD, this might also be a good place to indicate what methods or what fields you want to work in. So if you plan to do economics primarily, or if you want to work more with methods from sociology or something like that, then make sure to let us know here in this statement of purpose. Especially for statement of purposes, I should say, there really is no one template. We get very, very different styles for statements of purposes, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, so there's a lot of flexibility in how you write this. At the end of the day, you need to write something that makes us excited, where we say, oh, this person has a really interesting, compelling reason and goal, what they want to achieve, and we want to help them achieve that by admitting them here to Berkeley. Okay, last point on statements. Do not use one of these AI's systems to write your statements. Obviously, that would be cheating in the first place, so that's one good reason to not do it. But I should also say, the people that read your applications have seen a lot of AI-written text at this point, and we can often recognize them. But even that is, I think, not the main reason. I think the main reason is that these systems do not write statements that will convince anyone. They typically write really boring things that look like other things out there, and that's not what a compelling statement will look like. So sit down, spend time on these statements, and make sure they are your own voice that can get us excited about you. All right, Candace, anything on that, or should we next? All right. Transcripts. You do need to submit transcripts, and we will look at them. You can submit unofficial transcripts with your application. And then if you are admitted, then the university has some kind of process later on to get like official transcripts that sometimes are costly. But we do need to see transcripts as part of our admissions process. Letters of recommendations. I do not know why there should be a title here, letters of recommendations. Oh, here it is.
There you go.
So you can submit up to 3. They can come from various people from your professional or academic career, but they should come from sort of a professional type of context. So they should not be a family friend or something like that. They should be from people that have seen you work in an academic or professional type context. We really like to see that one letter is from a faculty or a professor who can assess your potential for academic work. that is very helpful for us, because at the end of the day, this is an academic degree program, and that is a helpful thing for us. When it comes to sort of picking who is a good letter writer, my most basic advice is always, it is always better to have someone who really knows you well and can write a very specific letter about you, rather than someone who might be famous or very prestigious but doesn't know you well. Okay, so there's nothing less helpful for us or less helpful for your application than a generic letter from some big shot who writes a letter where we clearly can see that that person talked with you twice in their lives and doesn't know you, right? So in that case, a letter from someone who actually did interact a lot with you but might be less famous is certainly a way stronger story for you. All right, so that's letters of recommendations. The resume or the CV that you have to submit, it should be a standard curriculum vitae. It should be in bullet point format, so not a written out prose format. We already have the personal history statement, but it should sort of summarize. It should be just a listing of all the various things that you have done in your life, and I'm sure there are many, many examples for good formats out there on the internet for that. A new thing that we're asking for the first time this year is what we call a quantitative resume. And this is really an opportunity to highlight your quantitative training and experience for the admissions committee to take into account. And let me, at the outset, stress, we are not using this quantitative resume in any shape or form to select the people that excel the most at mathematics or quantitative tools. So ERG values qualitative research. We value quantitative research. We are an interdisciplinary department, and we do not have sort of a preference for one type of research over another. But all ERG students will have to do both of these kinds of classes. So that's sort of part of the appeal for ERG, that everyone will do some quantitative and some qualitative coursework. And for some of the quantitative classes, you just need to have a certain preparation for that. And we don't have specific classes in mind, but it's just helpful for us to understand whether we think you can succeed in some of the classes that require some quantitative training. And so that's what we're trying to learn from these quantitative resumes. We're not trying to find the next world-changing mathematician here. And these quantitative resumes are especially useful for people where the quantitative skills might be a bit hidden. Okay, so if you are a math undergraduate student, you can this will not make a big difference, right? Because we can look at your transcript and we can see all the math classes you took, and we will have no question or doubt that you can handle the math. But there are people that took classes that actually used some quantitative methods where, for example, the class title just doesn't reveal that, okay? And it's especially for cases like that where this quantitative resume is an opportunity for you to explain to us, hey, I actually have worked with some data before. I have handled some maths before. Doesn't have to be long. Certainly no more than a page. It can be sort of bullet point format. There's a sample on our webpage, so take a look at that. And then, as I said, it can be a bit different depending on your experience. If you took a lot of math classes, just list them, and that will be good enough. But especially if you took, I don't know, a class in global governance, and you actually used data science tools in that class, and just say, hey, we used linear algebra to do some computation in this class, and that can be really helpful for us. And then just let me stress this again. We really want to be careful that we don't signal here that we look for only quantitative people. That nothing could be further from the truth. We want people that are interested in quantitative and qualitative work. We just want to make sure that everyone is prepared for the types of courses that you will take here at ERG. Language proficiency. This is a part that only applies to applicants from countries in which the official language is not English. You will have to submit some documentation that you will be able to follow the instruction here, because instruction here is in English. There are two options, the TOEFL and the International English Language Testing System. Those are sort of the standard accepted options from the university. if you have questions about this, my advice is go to our admissions webpage or reach out to this email address if you are in a more complicated situation, and we can help you with that. And then last but not least, you can submit additional supporting materials. So this could be samples of written work. If you've published something, you could submit that. If you've written a white paper or a newspaper article or something like that, you can submit those kinds of things. If you have more publications, you can submit that. If you want some honors or awards, you can put that in here. So they're just it's sort of an opportunity for you to submit additional materials that you think might be of interest to us when we try to decide whether to admit you. All right, final comments before we jump into your questions. So we keep stressing this. You do not need to contact individual faculty before you apply to ERG, and that is true for both the master and the PhD applications. You are admitted into the program. For both cases, you're not admitted to individual faculty. And the reality of ERG situation is that we get so many applications and so much interest into our degree programs that there is no feasible way for us faculty to respond to these, or for some of us at least, to respond to individual emails requesting sort of a pre-consultation about this. So if you wrote to faculty and asking for a meeting to discuss this, don't take it as any signal if you didn't get a response. It's not required. We discourage that at some level. And there's just too much of this coming towards our faculty to respond to all of these individually. And then let me conclude this with just reiterating this again. ERG is, we have a very broad definition of what an excellent application is. If you look at our student body, they have the most amazing and interesting and diverse backgrounds and profiles. We are not a program that sort of looks like only the people that went to the most prestigious undergraduate with the best grades, and sort of we have a very broad definition of what an excellent CV looks like, and how you different types of things where you had an impact on the world. So don't be deterred by sort of some worry that Berkeley's a well-known university and they only take a certain type of applicant. That is not true for ERG. We have a very, very broad definition of what we consider an excellent application. All right, Candace, unless you have something to add, I think that was what I had prepared in terms of the presentation.
That sounds good. Let's go to questions.
Okay, let's go to questions. So you need to all give me 1 second here because I need to pull them up. All right. All right, so let's start with the first question here. So this is someone who missed the Zoom presentation on October 24th by the current students, and whether we will post a recording of that. That's an excellent idea and question.
We are working on it, I'll say.
We are, okay, great.
Yeah.
The background for that is that we need to caption everything we release, and that everything we post as a video online, and that just takes some time. But Candace, you're saying that the plan is to release that eventually?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's go just right to the next question. So this is a question about advisors. Must the advisor be a core faculty, or could they come from across Berkeley? So this is a question that I think only applies to the PhD program, because we actually, if you put in an application for the master program, we are no longer asking for a faculty name that you want to work with, because you really are admitted into the master's degree program. Yeah, so for the faculty advisors, there's something Candace and I tried to figure out before this thing. So the broad story is that we have many PhD students that work with faculty that are not ERG core faculty, and it's something that we really value and support and cherish. Okay, so if you come to ERG into our PhD program and you want to work with a faculty outside of ERG, that is great. It's very common, and we support that. And as you know, we have a large affiliate network of faculty, and we have many faculty on campus that actually are really eager to work with ERG students, because ERG students are fantastic. So that's sort of the background on that. And in the application form, there is an opportunity to put in non-ERG core faculty. It might be that you can only do this for your second faculty choice. In that case, if we weren't able to figure that out, how the form was designed this year. But there's definitely an opportunity for you to put it in at some point. And there's also a little text box where for each faculty name that you mentioned there, where you can sort of elaborate on that a little bit more.
The other thing I wanted to say was simultaneously, you will still have a core faculty member from ERG as an advisor. So that person will be guiding you as well, making sure you are going through the degree process okay. And also for the master's students, you will be assigned an ERG core faculty member also as your advisor.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just go to the next. And if we also, if we answered your question, but actually misunderstood your question, and then please do follow up. We have all time until 3 o'clock, so don't be shy about that. All right, the next question here is, for students having a master's in mechanical engineering, what are the odds of getting assistantships into the ERG program, considering that it is advised not to contact faculty? So I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so I'm going to interpret assistantships as the question whether you would get something like a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship with a faculty. And I think the chances are very good. I should also, maybe I'll say something about our funding for PhD students specifically and how that works. So for PhD students, we guarantee 5 years of funding for any incoming PhD student. The specific form that can take can vary. So sometimes this will be that you get a research assistantship with the faculty where you are paid to work on a research project that often is overlapping with your degree, with your PhD research. Sometimes it is that you have to teach something. Sometimes there are fellowships that we have a couple of fellowships where we can nominate people. So it's a mix of different funding sources every year. Yeah, but I think, and we sort out funding sort of as we go along. But for anyone who applies to the PhD and is admitted, there's a guarantee that you will be funded for 5 years. Candace, did you want to add anything to that, or?
Well, I was just going to say for master students then in particular, they often get GSIs very often, and they also do very well getting GSRs. So I think in both cases, you're gonna have a good chance.
Yeah. Okay, so just in terms of lingo, so GSIs is Berkeley lingo for graduate student instructors. So those are students that help teach a class. And GSR is graduate student researcher, and those are students that help faculty with their research. Actually, maybe this is a good point to also mention, Candace, what we did the other week. So for our master's program, we do not guarantee funding for everyone. But the reality of our master's program is that almost everyone who is in our master's program is entirely funded for the full 2 years. And entirely funded in this case means that they have a funding source that covers tuition and then also a wage that they can live off. And I think we looked at the last, was it 2.5 years or something like that?
3 years,
or 3 years. And I think overall in that time, of all the master students that we had, there were, was it 5 semesters that were not fully funded. And
in some cases, that can be situations where someone comes in with a consulting job or another job too.
Yeah. So there are so that doesn't actually mean that 5 students tried to get funding and didn't get it. We always have some students that have other funding sources that are better for them than university funding sources. So we cannot promise it because we don't have these funds at hand. But I think the very long running experience in ERG is that most of our master students end up being fully funded.
And just to clarify too, because you were talking about, David, is the teaching positions and the research positions those kinds of positions, they're usually 50%, so you're working 20 hours a week, and those automatically pay your tuition and fees and then give you the salary on top.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next question. How do you consider a current PhD student that is applying to the ERG PhD program? Is that a no? Oh, so this would be a transition from an existing PhD program. So let's say you are unhappy in your current PhD program, I assume is the is the background there. That's a good question. There's no automatic no. It's definitely a bit of an unusual situation, so we don't see that very often, but I don't see why that would be an automatic no.
Right. It is possible. Logistically, you can do it. It is possible. You might have to, you might not be able to start exactly where you left off. That's the only thing, but it is possible.
Yeah. So, and I think I sort of just in sort of admissions philosophy, I think we want to be very open. If someone is unhappy with their PhD program or wants to pivot or do something else, that seems like an excellent reason for me to apply somewhere else. Just make sure that in that case, your personal history statement has a very, explains this to us. Why are you considering that? Okay, the next question is very simple. Can you switch between the MA, MS once admitted? Yes. You just tell Candace and she flips a button in the system and it's switched. So honestly, that question is not important at the admission stage at all. The truth is that you can just decide at the end, do I prefer an MA or MS on my diploma? And other than that, that makes no difference. Okay, for the ERG PhD program, do you need to contact a potential supervisor and do you need to have a research proposal? So no, you do not need to contact a potential supervisor. And as I've said a couple of times before, many of us are so inundated by contacts from people that want to work on PhD projects with us that we cannot even keep up with those anymore. So that is not necessary. It's also the case that you are not admitted to individual faculty at ERG. You're always admitted into the entire program. The short version is really that is not necessary. The second question is, do you need to have a research proposal? So I think you definitely don't need like a step-by-step research proposal for the 5 years that you would spend to do a PhD, because we are, we're not expecting you to be at that point. At the same time, for a PhD student, we certainly, in the statement of purpose, want to see what do you want to work on? What are the topics that you are interested in? What are the methods that you are excited about? None of that will sort of pin you down to what you will actually do once you come here, but we do want to see that you have thought these kinds of questions through. All right, next question. As an international student, can I be exempt from the English proficiency requirement with a UK master's degree? That is a question for you, Candace.
Yeah, what I was going to say is there are lots of variations where you don't have to do the test, and they're often asked what school, how many years, all this kind of thing. So if you just email the ERGgrad at Berkeley email address, then I can let you know. I'll just look up.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this is always going to be a little bit of a case-by-case decision. Okay, I earned a bachelor's degree in economics in July 2023. I've been working as a data analyst in an energy firm. Is it okay to apply to the PhD program? Do I stand a chance? Yes and yes. So first of all, I should say ERG really values sort of real-life work experience. So that is something that we like to see in our applications. Again, it's not a requirement. We always have a few people that join ERG directly out of undergrad, but it is certainly something that we like to see, and it's a plus in an application. So it's great to see that you're doing this. I guess you would have worked for 2 years if you were to be admitted. Yeah, so that's great. That's a good time frame. And then yes, there's no problem in you applying to the PhD program without a master degree or other graduate degree program, right? So that is the normal path through our PhD program. You apply to the PhD program. If you don't have a previous graduate degree, then you will go through our master's degree program in the first 2 years, but you're already accepted into the PhD program, and then you can just continue with your research after the first 2 years. So this is everything I'm seeing here is like probably the most common case of people in our PhD program. Okay, I think the next question. Oh, this is okay. There's a slight I understand you updated this a little bit. So the question here, I'll just add this twist. Do you stand a chance for the PhD program with no publications? Yes, right? We do not expect you to have published before. We hope to train you to get to a point where you can publish things. But that is certainly not a requirement. Now, if you have a publication beforehand, make sure to let us know, right? That's certainly a positive signal, but it is not a requirement. And then the final question from you, this is about an international student. I have a WES evaluated transcript. Is that accepted? I don't know what that is. Candace, have you seen that before?
Yes, I have. I think that's fine. I know I've seen that before.
Okay, but remember, the transcripts at this initial stage can be unofficial transcripts.
Right.
So, and then once we need the sort of official certified transcripts, if you're already admitted, I'm sure we can work out whatever problems there is.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Do international applicants get an application fee waiver? I have sent an email requesting a fee waiver, but I'm not yet to get any response. So Candace, I let you respond.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say there really are no waivers for international students. We only have the one possibility is for students coming from Africa. The MasterCard group on campus often has waivers. So that would be the only one that is, I'm sorry to say.
Okay. And maybe one other question. So Candace, for these fee waiver questions, is it also ERG-GRAD, the correct email address?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's okay. We're not getting more and more questions. So I think we will go until 3. What is the funding situation for the ERG PhD program? Yeah. So the funding situation for the ERG PhD program is we guarantee funding for all of our students. I think so I've been at ERG for 10 years. I think this is my 10th year. And I have never seen any PhD student go unfunded, even before we had this funding guarantee. It takes different forms, right? So sometimes people are on research grants and do research to get funded. Sometimes they win a fellowship. Sometimes they teach. But I have never seen anyone go unfunded in the PhD program. And at this point, we guarantee it for 5 years for anyone who is accepted into our PhD program.
And we also have a grant writing class that is every fall. And our students have always been very successful with fellowships, but this has helped even more too. So that's part of the funding source as well.
And I should say, ERG students are actually incredibly successful with fellowship applications, for example. So because you all work on so interesting topics, that's, and you'll get a fair bit of support. I mean, so once you're here, once you're admitted, you're not on your own trying to find funding. So I don't know what fraction of your time, Candace, you're spending on helping students find funding, but it's a big part of your job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Do I have to fill out a new application if I originally applied to the PhD but changed my mind and decided to do a master's instead? Yes. So if you apply for the PhD program and you check the box that you want to be considered for the master, or for whatever reason you end up being admitted into our master's program and not into the PhD program, and then in year 2 you decide, hey, I actually want to continue with the PhD program, you need to put in a new new application to our PhD program. That is so. Okay, next question. For a potential PhD who would like to work especially with an advisor who admits students through both ERG and ESPEM, how might I think about where best to apply? Okay, so I'm not surprised about this question because we have 2 fantastic faculty, Eugen and Meg, that are jointly appointed in both programs. And so you could apply to either PhD program to work with them. So this is actually a good question. I think, if I'm not mistaken, then both of them on their personal homepages where they, showcase their research work, I think they might actually have some guidance language that talks specifically about this question. Now, I'm not 100% certain about that, but I think that's where I would start, because I don't want to sort of say something now that disagrees with how both of them think about this. I think that's sort of where I would start. And okay, so maybe another thing. Okay, one other thing to think about this. When you're admitted to a PhD, you are admitted into, you will work with a certain faculty, but at the end of the day, you're admitted to a program, right? And so look at the description of ESPM and for ERG, and get a sense of what other things are going on besides the faculty that I specifically want to work with. Where do I feel there is more overlap with what I want to do, right? Sort of independently of what these individual faculty are doing. And that might be another really useful way to think about that decision. Okay, next question. How much supplemental material would be a reasonable amount to share? It's a good question. I mean, don't submit 5 publications, right? Realistically, we're not going, we get hundreds and hundreds of applications. We will not, if you submit 150 pages of supplemental material, quite honestly, no one is going to look at it. So I think, if you have writing sample, I think 1 is fine if you have 1. If you don't have 1, it's also not a problem, right? Don't submit more than one writing sample, I would say. And then if you have really things that you want to showcase, then put them in there. But don't feel the need to sort of fill it up, I think that's in general good advice. It's better to have a really well-written short thing than try to make up with quantity of stuff that you submit. All right. When applying to the PhD after the master's, can you transfer credits to decrease the number of years? Yeah. So if you did the master's in ERG and then apply for the PhD and continue, then of course everything you did during the first 2 years where you did the master's is completely accounted for. So yeah, that you would then directly after you finish your master's start with your research, and when you're done with your own research, then you're done with the PhD. Yeah.
And I was going to add one thing to that too, which is often students who are finishing their master's, they do a final project, and many times that project is then used for their dissertation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, maybe in the background, the question is, should I apply, if I'm not so sure, I don't know yet, should I apply to the PhD or the master? I think if you know that you want to do a PhD, apply for the PhD right away. If you are unsure and you want to test it out a little bit, want to see whether you actually enjoy research or not, then maybe applying to the master's degree first might be a better idea. Okay, next question. What would you like to see in a profile of someone who has work experience but is graduating from undergraduate school this December in order to be accepted? So it's a great question, but I cannot give you sort of a point-on answer because we look at every file holistically, right? So there is no one specific thing that you need to checkbox, right? I mean, maybe other than the language proficiency or something like that. But we look at your entire profile. We look at what you worked on. Did you have an impact there? Things like that. How did you do in your undergraduate studies? And we look holistically at the full picture to make a decision. So I don't think I can give like a specific answer to that. Candace, I don't know whether you have it. Yeah. Okay, next question. I'm in corporate sustainability utilities consulting and want to develop research interests before applying. Are there opportunities to get involved? How else do you recommend exploring topics? Oh, okay. So, Yeah, okay. So we don't have an official policy on that. I think individual faculty might sometimes have research opportunities that are open to people that, sometimes they hire for researchers, like staff positions or something like that. So, but there's no like official ERG-wide program in there. I should say I do not. There is no requirement if you want to apply to our PhD that you have additional, like, this is a new thing, I think, these pre-doc research experience, that you've worked in a research context before you apply for our PhD. That is not something, I know that is a bit of, in some areas, that's a bit of a trend, that now you need to do an undergraduate, then you need to a master's degree, and you need to do pre-doc research experience, and only then, and that is not the case for us, right? So just with what I'm seeing right now here, if you have an undergraduate degree in this area and then you worked in consulting in this area, I would, that to me sounds like a perfect profile to apply directly to the PhD. Doesn't, maybe there are other reasons why you want to do that, but I would not worry about not being competitive because you didn't have additional research experience at a university. Okay, are Nigerians exempt from the English test? Candace, do you?
I don't have that as a blanket one, sorry. Yeah. But so email me, just email me, and I'll do a double check. Okay.
Email the ERG grad at berkeley.edu.
ERG grad.
Yeah. There are full scholarships, and how much is it? So we do have. There are a couple of scholarships that we can hand out every year. It's a bit different every year, so I don't yet know what we exactly will have this year. Those scholarships typically would cover tuition for the years where you get the scholarship, and then a living stipend. I do not know the amounts at this point, but it is. So I'll say a broad thing about this. This is an expensive area here where we're located. So this is always tricky. But I think if you get one of these scholarships, I mean, you will not live a luxury life where you go out to fancy dinners every night on that. But I think it is an amount where people can live well in this area and support themselves through graduate school if you get one of those. Does that, Candace, if you have anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say, we do the best we can when we receive your offer letter, that you will, for PhDs, obviously we said it's a 5-year guarantee. For master's students, when we have funding, we offer you that as well. Like, we're trying to be very creative and help you out as much as we can. Yeah.
I think here's my advice, I think, for anyone who's really worried about funding, which I think is a very, very legitimate worry. At some level, I would put that worry a little bit on the back burner right now. I think I would apply, and if you, in the end, are admitted, we always have what we call visit day. So the entire admitted cohort we invite to come to Berkeley campus sometime in the spring, and spend a whole day with ERG and our current students. And in my experience, I think that's the best way for you to really get a good sense of whether the funding situation can work for you or not. Because Candace and I can tell you one thing, but the real lived experience, how the funding works out, the best and most direct and information about is from our current students that live that right now. And this visit day is really a fantastic opportunity for anyone who is admitted to talk with all our students and learn how they are financing their studies. So that's I think my high level advice, what I would do. We try really hard to fund everyone. We succeed. I think almost everyone is fully funded here, but how that sort of plays out, what that means for your day-to-day life, I think the best information is actually our students and not Candace and myself.
David, I want to say something before our next question, just to remind people that the deadline is December 3rd. And to make sure, and the time there's a time on that day, which is 8:59 p.m. Pacific time. And so don't mess up the time. Do it early. If you do run into technical difficulties, again, email that ERG grad at Berkeley. Okay? But do it early.
This is an important deadline. Try to make sure you hit it early. All right, we have 5 more minutes, and we have quite a number of questions. So let's try to not rush through them, but go through them quickly. Is working as a part-time graduate research assistant considered as professional experience? Yeah. So if you work, so that if you worked as a graduate research assistant sometimes before, that's certainly a positive in an application, right? But as I said, we don't have we don't have a rule. If you don't have professional experience before you apply, that you're out. That's not the case, right? We try to admit cohorts that really have different experiences every year. Okay, thank you for presentation. It's good to know and quite special to have a program able to fund students' tuition and wage. Curious to know, where is the program's funding coming from? That's an excellent question. So, okay, so the very high level, the ERG master's degree is funded by the state of California. So that's where the wages for the faculty and the staff come from. And then the tuition that the University of California, Berkeley takes in generally. We are not a tuition-driven degree program. So there are lots of professional degrees out there that need to pay for every dime that they spend out of the tuition that their own students bring in. That is not the case for our program. We're a public university, and the public university has a mandate to work for the public good, and the ERG Master program and PhD program is part of that, right? So this is this is not a profit-making degree program or anything like that. At the end, I think the state of California and the university are paying for these programs. And then the specific funding for students, graduate research students, the research positions, this teaching positions, they come from different sources. The teaching positions come out of central campus budgets for undergraduate teaching. The research funding, if you get a graduate research position, we faculty get grant money to work on research, and then we use that money to hire graduate student researchers. Some of the fellowships come from central campus funds. So it's a very broad set of resources. Okay, how much annual funding ballpark is available and guaranteed for a PhD student? So I assume this is the amount that you are guaranteed. I don't have that. I don't want to say something that's incorrect. So I'm gonna bail on that question unless Candace,
I'd say roughly, I'll give you a rough estimate that it'll be $35,000 for fall and spring. That we guarantee that, knowing then that you're also going to be earning something over the summer. But that's how we're doing your calculation. So
that's sort of what your income is, and then you also do not pay tuition. So,
exactly.
Right. So that is you don't have to pay tuition out of those of that amount.
And tuition is about $12,000 a year, and then add another $7,500 if you're an international or if you're a non-resident. So that's be covered too. So just in terms of amounts, though, that are also covered for you.
All right, so let's rush through the last couple of ones. For applicants that have been out of school for 5+ years, do you still advise having one letter of recommendation come from a former professor, or could only letters from supervisors suffice? So if you still can get a hold to faculty and you think they could write a strong letter, I would certainly advise that. There are situations, we sometimes have people that come to ERG quite late in their career. They work for 10-15 years and then come back to school. And at that point, most of your professors will probably have forgotten about you. In that case, it's certainly better to get a letter from someone else. There's no hard work. We're not putting your file aside if you don't have a letter of recommendation from a professor. But if you think you can get one that is speaking meaningfully about you, then I would still recommend that. All right, next, very good questions. Can I bring my wife to accompany me for my PhD studies? I think this is probably especially a question for international students. I think there are visa options for that. but I don't know all the details. But I can certainly say that we have a fair number of students that have their spouses, their life partners with them in some form or another.
Mm-hmm. You would just work with our international student office, and they would tell you, with your visa, you would have a dependent as part of your visa.
Yeah. Okay, so let's, we have like 3 more, and then I think maybe we can actually get to all of them. If you have had gaps in your academic career, does this negatively impact your application? No, I don't see that as a problem at all. I mean, you might tell us what you did during that time, but you know, there are very good reasons why you might have a gap. So I don't see that as a negative. Could you speak to the ratio between coursework and research work during the masters? So at the beginning of the masters, you have much more coursework and taking classes, and then the last 2, maybe 3 semesters, the research work on your project ramps up a lot. I cannot give you sort of a share of hours spent or something like that, but it is pretty substantial on both, I would say. Okay. Hi, Candace. I'm not sure I heard you correctly, but did you say app waiver fees are only available for people from Africa? I am from Africa. I just wanted to be sure.
Yes, that's correct. For international students. There are other fee waivers for domestic students that are available also.
Yeah, so there are some fee waivers for domestic students that are part of certain groups or that have certain qualifications. And if you have questions,
on the website,
email ERGgrad or look on our webpage. Okay, for research papers which are almost ready to be submitted, how should we mention about them? You can list them in your CV as almost ready for submission. You could attach them as a working sample if you wanted to. So yeah, definitely sort of mention them in some form. All right, I think we're at time, and I think that was actually also the last question.
Great.
That is excellent timing. Candace, do you have anything else that you want to make sure we say?
No, if you have questions later, send it to the email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. I have a great admissions assistant too, so he is really on it, and so we're responding quickly.
Great. So thank you all so much for spending this hour with us. I hope this was in some form helpful. I think the main message that I really want to leave you all with is that don't be shy about applying. We are looking for excellence in very many different ways, and don't be intimidated by, oh, Berkeley is a prestigious university. We have a really fantastic crop of students every year that come from all different types of backgrounds, and so put in your application, and I hope that what we told you today was in some form helpful, and then I'm looking forward to reading many of your applications once they are submitted. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.